Our third speaker, Dr. Helen Szoke. She will talk on use your skills to build optimism in the world. So, not sure whether that's positivity, a useful belief, but definitely optimism, a different play on it. Helen is the Chief Executive of Oxfam Australia and a strong advocate for foreign and international development, human rights, gender and race equity. Helen joined Oxfam in 2013. Prior to this appointment, she served as Australia's Federal Race Discrimination Commissioner and as the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commissioner. Helen is both Vice President and board member of the Australian Council for International Development, for ASFID, and also sits as an executive board member for Oxfam International. Helen has recently been appointed to the Council of the University of Melbourne. She's also a board member of the Crania Foundation. In 2018, Helen was awarded an Order of Australia for distinguished service to social justice through roles with human rights, anti-discrimination and equal opportunity organisations, to health sector policy development and to the disadvantaged. She's been a Victorian finalist in 2016 Telstra Business Women's Awards and received an honorary doctorate of laws from Deakin University in 2015 for a contribution to human rights in 2011. Helen was awarded the Law Institute of Victoria Paul Baker Award for her contribution to the human rights, and in 2014 she received the University of Melbourne Alumni Award for Leadership. She's a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, Fellow of the Institute of Public Administration, member of the International Women's Federation of Australia, and Chief Executive Women. What a resume. Please welcome Helen.
I'm really sorry about that. I'll have to check with my office. So thanks very much. I mean, this is like my worst nightmare. I follow a motivational speaker, a beautiful, successful young woman who is also a beauty queen. I'm about to be followed by an AFL player of great success. So I'm sorry, everyone. I'll do the best I can. And I've just spent a day traipsing around Federal Parliament watching what unfolds there in terms of whether or not we're going to have a leadership change. I guess what I'd like to do is really just share some reflections. And I'm at a very different stage of my life. I have to say that this is a great stage of your life because, you know, that old saying about when does life begin, when all the pets have died and all the kids have left home, although one of ours has just come back. So this is kind of some of us. My husband and I have got 8 kids between us, so we're well versed in going through year 12, experiences with kids, finding jobs, sorting out careers, broken hearts, etc., etc. The matriarch, John's mother, my husband's mother, is at the start of that photo. But it's interesting, the reason, and maybe the reason you put yours at the end, but the reason that I put that photo up there is that one of the most important things I think we do in life is to be part of families. And sometimes those families are dysfunctional and sometimes they're really tight. And for all the parents in the room, you'll probably know that the most important thing you've ever done is to have kids because they've taught you more than you could ever know from any other life experience. So we're really pleased with our family most of the time. Sometimes we're not. And I guess the other thing is just to kind of reflect about, you know, what matters to you. And I think that's an emerging thing for all of us when we think about what life's journey is and where we want to go. So one of the things that matters enormously to me is what's happening in Australia with the First Nations people. And I've walked in here to see all of the beautiful art on the walls here, the Aboriginal art. And I do think that the process of actually acknowledging that we are gathered here on the land of the First Nations people and to pay respects to elders past and present is more than just a symbolic gesture. It is actually a recognition that our First Nations people have made a really significant contribution to this country and who've been very forgiving of what we've done to them. So one of the things that matters to me a lot is working with First Nations people, and the woman in this photo here is a woman by the name of Vonda Malone. She's the first ever woman, female mayor of the Torres Straits. So right up in the northern part of Australia, the Torres Straits is a really hard area to be a mayor of because it's numerous little islands, scattered populations, very expensive to get around. On the island that she lives, Thursday Island, which is kind of called the biggest roundabout in the world because it's so small, there's something like 60-odd government departments there, ostensibly doing good things for Aboriginal people. And Vonda was the winner of the McKinnon Prize earlier this year for political leadership, an amazing woman who's chosen to go back to her community. This was the night of the prize. The woman in the middle is Robin Gordon, the widow of the late Michael Gordon, who was the Age journalist, and Michael was working on the development of this McKinnon Prize. But I do think one of the things that changes as you go up, as you decide what you want to do, I think it is really important that you think about what matters to you and you put some energy into that so that there is something that you give back to you as well as to the community. The other thing is that as you go through life, I guess you're part of different families at different times. This is a photo of an international meeting of Oxfam. So these are all of the people that head up Oxfams across the world. We met in Delhi earlier this year. Lots of different faces, lots of different cultures, lots of different nationalities. And I guess if you're at school at the moment, that's another different family. If you're part of a football team, that's another different family. And the reason, again, that I raise that is because ultimately we are very connected and we derive energy from other human beings, we learn from other interactions. Some of what Chris said earlier on about being really open to new possibilities, I think, is absolutely right. And I can tell you that these meetings, when we meet internationally, are some of the most frustrating meetings on earth because it's so complex. You've got different cultures, different accents, different styles, different commitments. But being actually open to what the possibility of a collective is when you're talking about a global family is really important. And I think I'm with you. I think positivity's got a role to play in some of that. The other thing that we've heard, and I think you've really shared with us, is this issue of, out of adversity. So I put this photo in because Mary Kinney is an amazing woman who lives in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. And for the last 20 years, she's dedicated her life to rescuing women from violence. And just to place that in context, in the highlands in Goroka, in the district that she lives, the sorcery is still practiced. So sorcery is really the process of identifying women as being evil, like witches. And there are awful abuses that are perpetuated, and often it's because a man no longer wants the woman, because the woman's family's seen to have brought bad luck to a village, and dreadful mutilations occur of women in this area. And Mary Kinney, about 2 decades ago, decided that she wanted to change things in her community. And she set up a small not-for-profit organisation to help rescue women when they were subject to violence. And it's not just a matter of going and picking a woman up in these little villages in Papua New Guinea. It's actually a matter of often needing the male members of her family to come and help, where you can't ring the police because often the police don't have petrol in the car, so they can't get out to work out what's going on. Where if the women are rescued, they often have to leave their children because it's a patriarchal society up in the highlands here, and they can't go back to their own family because that's the shame of having a failed marriage. And Mary Kinney and the people that she's worked with have dedicated their life to actually relocating these women and helping them start their lives again. She's very resilient, I think, and continues to do this work to this day. So when you think about, what gets you out of bed in the morning, it's good to think about what it must be like to get out of bed for some of these women that do this incredible work. And all power to you too for raising money for women who experience violence, which is such an endemic problem. The other thing that's really critical, I think, is having a voice. And this was a photo that was taken the week before the national elections in Pakistan. And for those of you who know your history of cricket, you know that Imran Khan's just been elected the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And this is a program that we're involved with in Oxfam over there, but it's a program of encouraging women who often are not considered to be participants, I guess, in decision-making in the community. So it's encouraging women to register to vote, to certainly go and vote, so things that we kind of take for granted in Australia, and also to be part of the political parties. And there are a number of women who have actually stood for Parliament and got in. And there's all sorts of ways that you can have a voice. You don't have to be part of the political process. You can be part of the process of being involved in decisions for the footy club or the cricket club, or going on the student council, or for parents to be on the school council. But I think it is really important that you think about the opportunities where you can contribute and share some of your experiences. And the other thing is, I guess there's no one set way of being you, and there's so many opportunities, I think, where people can make a contribution, and they can do that at their pace, in their time, in their schedule, in terms of what's going on in the rest of their lives, what supports they have. So if you are studying for exams at the end of the year, that's not a great time to be terribly involved in other things. But if you do see opportunities to volunteer or to do something different or to team up with other people, then that's a great thing. And these are just some of the things that I guess we have the great privilege of being part of in being part of Oxfam. But they're all different ways where you can actually volunteer. You can do the 100k trail walk that we run. You have to walk in teams of 4 in 48 hours. I did it once, I'm never doing it again. You can actually be involved in helping raise money to deal with some of the humanitarian responses. You can go to our shops, whatever the case may be. And I guess the last thing I really wanted to talk about was, you know, making the most of wherever you are. And I think, Chris, there's some similar themes in what Chris was saying as well. You make the most of the opportunities. I spend a lot of time, this is in Bangladesh, I spend a lot of time going to Asia, which is shocking because I can't sit cross-legged, clearly. And the Asian women think I'm just crazy. They keep trying to push my legs down. You know, I've had the most amazing 5 years going into Oxfam, where I'm able to go into these countries and be welcomed by teams on the ground and to actually see what's happening in communities. Now, it's taken me 40 years to get to this stage of my career, but it's the pinnacle of the most incredible opportunity. This photo there, I'm just showing off really, because that was taken in Tacloban Airport after Typhoon Haiyan went through in the Philippines. And it's the most amazing that the watchtower was kind of blown out. The tarmac was just this, it was like sort of out of a movie of, you know, planes landing, planes taking off, helicopters landing, and other things that go up and down that I don't know the name of, but they're special kind of aeroplanes. And just the most extraordinary opportunity to see what happens after a disaster and to see how people rally together and do what they need to do to survive. And I guess the one thing I would say, and it's kind of building on some of the messages that you've had, in every one of these situations where I've had the great privilege to go in and see communities who are recovering or who are doing something different, the thing that I think has really should be reinforced is just the resilience that people bring. So whether it's families who are in the Zaatari refugee camp in Jordan, having fled Syria, whether it was the families who queued up for hours in the heat to get emergency packs because they'd lost everything through the typhoon, whether it was recently going to Bangladesh to see the Rohingya response, where the Rohingyans had left Myanmar and where they had very little. And I had the most amazing experience of talking to some women about some of what they'd experienced, which had been pretty horrific as they fled Myanmar. And it was terribly, terribly hot in Bangladesh. And a woman telling her story about what her experience is, but fanning me because she was worried that I was hot and she wanted to look after me. So I think people are very generous by nature in the main, are very good and very resilient. And that's, again, something that I think that we ought to hold on to and think about as we go through our own ups and downs. And I think that your story was really important to give us a framework for doing that. So I haven't got an acronym, I'm afraid. I haven't got a framework. I've just got a whole lot of wonderful experiences, and I hope that out of just this little talk you've got some key messages that you can think about as you go through your own journeys, and really delighted to have had the opportunity to talk to you tonight. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Helen. What a fantastic contribution to communities in Australia, but all around the world.